This laptop happens to be one of the first laptops to be using AMD's Ryzen AI 300 series CPUs. This is the ASUS ZenBook S16. Now, ASUS was kind enough to partner on this video. This is not a review. It's an overview because the CPU that's inside of here is still an engineering sample. Reviews will come at a later date. Now, this ZenBook S16 is a gorgeous laptop. I mean, look at it. It's using the plasma ceramic aluminum design that ASUS is known for, and it just gives it this unique look that other laptops just don't have. Now, this is the darker color, or it's like a dark gray to be precise, but you can now buy it in a white version, which I personally think looks better. It's a ridiculously light laptop for its size. Like, this is 16 inches, and it only weighs about 3.3 pounds. It feels very well made. There's no creaks or cracks when I push on it. It's really thin, and most importantly, you have a ton of I/O. On the left-hand side, you have your HDMI 2.1 port. You have two USB 4.0 ports, which support up to 40 gigabits per second each, your combo audio jack, and then on the right-hand side, you have a USB-A port and a full SD card slot. Now, the beauty about this laptop is that it's at a price point, I don't have the exact pricing, but I think it's gonna be around like the $1,300 range, and that nets you a nice keyboard, a nice touchpad, and a really, really good display, which I'll get to in a second. Now, this touchpad is absolutely massive. It is a massive glass touchpad. It feels very accurate to use. I don't really have any complaints. The click is nice and satisfying. The keyboard, I am so glad they didn't try to cram a numpad. It just looks so symmetrical like this. Instead of having like this numpad over here and then the touchpad would be over here, I think this is just more visually appealing. Of course, the keys themselves do have white backlighting, and the typing experience is quite comfortable. There's a lot of actuation. It's very clicky. The keys are nice and big, but they're not too big, and the spacing is perfect. I have zero issues typing on this. Now, because this is an AI-focused laptop, you're obviously gonna have the Copilot key on the bottom right-hand corner. Now, some of you are probably asking if these grills up here are actually speakers. They're not. They're just holes for heat dissipation to allow for better cooling. And of course, you have the ASUS logo. There's no fingerprint scanner, but you do get a IR blaster at the top, which will help with facial recognition. Like, this does have Windows Hello facial recognition, so you can log in. Now, because this is an engineering sample, they don't have to hire the sticker guy, which is fantastic. And obviously there is a 1080p webcam at the top. Now, you would think because there are no speaker grills built into the deck that this laptop wouldn't have more than 2 speakers, but there's actually 6 speakers built inside of here. Now, they are bottom facing, but there's actually a really good amount of treble, the mids sound good, and more importantly, there's actually bass. I find with most bottom firing laptops, there's only 2 speakers and there is no bass at all. But one of the stars of the show happens to be this display. It's gorgeous. This is an OLED display. It's a 3K OLED display. It has really good color accuracy. The color gamut is incredible. It's 120 hertz, so you have that high refresh rate, and it has very respectable screen brightness. It's also touch, so if you wanted a touch display, you can go ahead and do it, and it happens to be OLED, which makes things even better. Now, the screen is a little bit reflective, which is typical on a touch display because it is using a glossy panel, but because it is a glossy panel, colors just pop a little bit more. The specs on this guy are AMD Strix Point CPU, probably 12 cores. It's using their new integrated GPU, which technically will be faster than last year's version. You have a good amount of storage, like this unit has about 1 terabyte. I have 24 gigabytes of LPDDR5X memory inside of here, but I'm sure the SKUs will probably be 16 or 32. The price point, I don't know exactly. I'll place the actual price in the description down below, but I'm guessing around $1,200 to $1,300 for this beautiful OLED display. And look, the performance is obviously going to be better than the 8000 series that's been coming out now. And the idea behind this one is an AI-focused laptop. For AMD, this is their kind of Intel Meteor Lake killer, for example. So I'm expecting this to have more performance than what Intel is currently offering, but I'm also expecting a nice little bump up in the integrated GPU performance because AMD is not really making a lot of dedicated GPUs anymore for their laptops, so they're really focusing on the integrated ones, and we're gonna see a nice transition to faster speeds. Now, I put this through a few tests. I can't show performance benchmarks, I'm not allowed, but again, this is an engineering sample, so this is not real life use. Like, this is not what it's going to be like, but I can expect this thing just basically good enough for things like light video editing, Photoshop. If you need to do any sort of development, having, you know, that beautiful 16-inch display will make a big difference. Now, if you're wondering what the charging brick is going to look like, it's actually quite small. This is a 65-watt charging brick. So the overall footprint of this entire laptop is quite light. If you're worried about fan noise, I mean, this does have fans inside of it, but in typical ASUS fashion, you have different modes to play around with. Like right now I have it in standard mode and I can't hear the fans at all. Like even if you put this under load, yeah, the fans will kick on, you'll hear them, but they're relatively low. The only time I hear the fans is if I leave it on performance mode, because they're giving you the option to really push this thing to its full potential at the expense of a little bit more noise. Now, before I show you the internals, I should also mention that the NPU inside of here is capable of 45 tops of performance, but look at that battery. That is a massive battery. It basically takes up half the laptop. It's actually really thin, this battery. It's kind of split it in half on two sides, which is pretty cool. And then you have the left and right side just taken up by all the speakers. Now, their RAM is soldered on to the motherboard. Like that's it. Those days of having upgradable RAM are starting to become less and less. It's probably just going to be only on big, thick gaming laptops going forward. But the only thing that you could potentially upgrade is your NVMe SSD. If you want something bigger down the road, you can obviously swap it out to do that. Now, you do have a Wi-Fi 7 card. This is soldered onto the motherboard, but the most impressive thing is how thin this vapor chamber cooler really is. Like, this thing is helping cool the CPU, integrated GPU, and obviously the NPU. And it just looks really cool in a laptop that actually doesn't have a dedicated GPU. So here's the thing. This is what I think is going to happen with this laptop. It's going to perform faster than Meteor Lake processors. Like, it's going to be, I have a feeling, substantially faster. And the integrated GPU inside of here is going to be a nice boost for those of you out there that don't want a dedicated GPU to drain your battery, but want enough GPU power that you can do some of your favorite things, like even game, if you don't mind dropping the settings a little bit. The display is absolutely gorgeous, but I have a feeling, based on the battery size and the efficiencies that Strix Point is supposed to provide, is that this laptop will have insane battery life. Either way, I'm going to get an actual review unit into the studio and I will be putting it through its proper tests. Make sure to drop all your questions in the comment section down below and I'll answer as many of them as I can. Also, if you're interested in picking this up, there'll be a link in the description. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.